When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, the podcast where we take you down the rabbit hole into the fantastic world of the strange, the paranormal, and the unknown. I'm Morgan Knudsen. Merry Christmas. Let's get this going. Guys, we have the incredible Chad Lewis back today for yet another journey into the land of bizarre Christmas stories and folklore that I promise you have not heard of. I had not heard of half of this stuff, and I had the privilege a couple of years ago of doing all of the illustrations and the foreword for his amazing book, Winter Legends and Lore. We're going to be diving into that, but as well as some brand new Christmas stories that I hadn't heard of. I mean, and I'm talking some spooky stuff, some weird stuff, some spooky stuff, and just some plain old bizarre traditions that people used to have. So, that being said, everybody grab your hot cocoa, grab your cider, grab your candles, light your fireplace, get yourself all cozied in, because this is a journey that you guys won't soon forget. And I wonder how many of us will be adopting some of these crazy traditions by the end of this episode. Well, let's get on to it, everyone. Here we go.
Abercrombie Kids is bringing the cheer all holiday season and the gifts too. No matter how long their wish list is, there's always room for just one more. Whether it's a new winter coat, an extra pair of jeans, or cozy matching sweat sets, get gifting with looks they've been waiting for all year. Shop Abercrombie Kids in the app, online, and in stores.
Oh Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
Okay, Chad, today you're gonna drive the all-electric Toyota BZ.
But my electric vehicle phobia. I'm not ready, Dr. Ross.
I believe in you.
Oh my gosh. We're inside it.
Try to take deep breaths, okay?
The ventilated seats, they're touching me.
You can do this, Chad. Drive the car. How do you feel, Chad?
I feel cured. Woohoo! I'm doing it!
The all-electric BZ. One drive can change your mind. Toyota. Let's go places.
Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. And this is such a great way to get into Christmas. Here we are just a few days out. And Chad, I couldn't think of anybody better to be here than you. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all the things. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Let me turn down this Bing Crosby in the background, and I'm ready to go for the holiday season.
Man, I'm a little disappointed that we're turning it down. So but this is great, and I'm so glad that we're able to delve back into all the weird Christmas folklore. I've had a weird couple of months, and I'm ready for some stories. I know everybody else probably is too, and I'm stoked to cover a few that we didn't cover before. You've got new stories.
always digging up new stuff, especially in the winter. When winter in the Midwest, as it is for a lot of people who have winter weather, it's a time when you're meant to slow down. You're meant to recover, rejuvenate, get ready for the spring rebirth. And for me, that means projects as well. So often in winter, I'll put aside some of the books or other projects I'm doing and then just dig into winter legends and folklore, dig through some old newspaper archives and find what early people believed in and what their superstitions were. And so I'm learning new Christmas and winter stuff every single day.
I think it's awesome because there's more than what I ever thought there was. And I mean, I've learned so much just through you and through like our projects and stuff like that. I've learned a ton. And even through my own culture, because my background is Norse. And there's just so much out there that I don't think we realize. Like we think about the classic tales like Dickens and things like that. But there's such a heavy supernatural component to the winter that we often I don't think we really grasp, but it's coming to light. Am I wrong in that?
You're absolutely right. There's been a resurgence throughout the world of taking Christmas and winter from too much commercialism and just too much light and brightness to balancing out with some darkness. And it really was in the early days a matter of life and death. And there's a reason they called it, the dead of winter, the darkest days of the year, that it was too hard for people to think of making it through the entire season. But if you could split that up, you could make it to Krampus night or St. Nicholas Day. And then if you could survive that, you could make it to the solstice. And after the solstice, Christmas Eve and Christmas, if you celebrate it, and on and on and on. So you had all these holidays that were meant to get you through the winter, because much like today for winter, in the old days, it was downtime for a lot of people. You couldn't farm during the winter. You had less chores. You were inside. It got dark early. It was cold. You were sitting by the fire, maybe mending your clothing or sharpening your tools. If someone knew how to play an instrument, that would be great. But you'd be telling stories, and usually those stories turn to the dark side.
Yeah, they sure do. And I mean, even here in Edmonton, I mean, by 4:00 p.m., it's dark here. We are sitting in pitch black by 4:00. And I mean, nowadays, of course, we're turning on the hockey game, or we're sitting around and having supper or whichever, and we don't really think about this. But even here in Alberta, like we've talked about before, I mean, like tonight, it's going down to about -40 with a wind chill. And it's crazy the difference in the environment and how it changes our thoughts, our moods, how we behave. I mean, people talk about seasonal depression and things like that, but it really does provoke this sort of sense of survival with us, and just at a root cause. And one of the stories that really caught me that as we were working on winter legends and lore was even just the idea of sitting around the fireplace and being able to see your shadow. That's pretty interesting. Do you want to talk about that one a little bit? Because that one bears repeating for me.
I think today, many of us just don't realize how important the fireplace, the hearth was during the old days, that it was where you'd get your light for your house with your candles, of course, your heat, you do your cooking over it, but it was really your entertainment. Long before the radio, long before television, and now the internet, you'd gather around the fire and talk about your day and do all your chores and read religious texts and books. And so the idea was that if you were gathered around telling stories and somebody's shadow was cast on the wall and the head wasn't present on the shadow, that was a bad omen, a foretelling that that person was going to die within the next 12 months, that they wouldn't survive. And we talked about this before, but I found new information on that they even took it a step further, saying that, well, if your head was partially cast on the shadow, you might survive 6 months, but that's all you had left.
Like that's nice.
Doctor's terminal illness prognosis for you, that, you'd had six 6 months, better say your goodbyes, get your affairs in order.
Oh, geez. Okay, yeah, it just gets worse. Now it seems to be if, you get a partial diagnosis by the fireplace. Sounds like just the perfect place to be gathering.
Well, in the old days, there were two important questions for early peoples. One, how long they would live. Was death coming for them? And two, what would their romantic life be like? Would they have suitors from nearby? Would those suitors be rich or poor? Would they come to America? Those type of things. So often during the winter, you had games that were really divination games. And I was amazed because, of course, Halloween has a lot of divination to it, of looking into a mirror at midnight on Halloween night and your lover will be there. Your future spouse will be in the mirror or standing behind you, those type of things. But the winter, and especially during the Christmas season, that's what it was, predicting your death and your love life. And one of the ones I just recently discovered was that often young women would get together and draw sticks, and that would predict your future husband. If the stick was long, he'd be tall. Short, obviously. But then they also said there were crooked sticks, and I don't know if they meant maybe you'd have a disability or that maybe you'd be shady. You'd be a crooked type soul. So you'd always want to get, I guess, whatever type you enjoyed.
So do things like mistletoe have anything to do with divination?
Yeah, so mistletoe is probably of the winter plants we associate with Christmas, of holly, ivy, mistletoe. Mistletoe's perhaps the one that had the most folklore surrounding it, that it was said that only good things could happen under a mistletoe. So if you needed negativity, you wouldn't find it in mistletoe, that it could protect your house from being struck by lightning, which was great. It would prevent you from having nightmares and ensuring that your crops wouldn't fail. But I had no idea that it was also predictive of your future love life. And usually young women or couples that were courting each other would start burning 2 leaves of a mistletoe in a fire. And if those leaves burned together and kind of curled up into one leaf, well, that obviously meant you were going to have a smooth, easy marriage, that you'd have a long love life. Now, on the opposite side, if those leaves started burning separately or smoldering off in distances from each other, well, that was going to be negative, so that you'd burn those together. And the same was done during Halloween with nuts, that if they burned together or cracked together, that meant you'd stay together. And it just showed the importance that back then, those were the most important questions. Who was I going to marry and would I be healthy? Those were the main concerns. So a lot of the Christmas divination focuses on those 2 main questions.
That's what's interesting to me about this type of folklore, is that not only is it fascinating to understand and read about, but it also gives you a glimpse into societies at that point in time and where their thought process were, what their priorities were. Like you start to learn a little bit more about who our ancestors were, who we were at that point in time. And I mean, I feel like some of that's been lost a little bit, because some of these stories are, of course, taken with a grain of salt, but at the same time, there is so much to be learned from these types of stories. And speaking about fireplaces, you also were mentioning something about smoking out your house. What the heck?
Winter was the perfect time to cleanse your house, especially as it got closer to the celebration of the new year, that you would close all your vents and your windows and get all the fires going, and it would smoke up your house, and you were supposed to stay in the house as long as you could handle it. And that was probably a fine line from passing out and dying versus going outside into the fresh air. But that was meant to cleanse you, to clear you for the new year, both financially, physically, mentally, spiritually. But when you were done with that, you'd often bring your livestock into the house, and that would cleanse them, so that they would be protected from evil spirits and they wouldn't go lame and they would produce. And some farmers took it a step further on Christmas by feeding their livestock ivy. And that was meant to protect them for the entire next year too, that with cleansing came the protection of eating ivy on Christmas.
That is a damn full house. You're bringing your livestock and you're out. Like, can you imagine? That is when you were going to have to do a lot more than smoke out your house by the time they leave.
Exactly. And back then, imagine just how long that smoke would be. Well, it probably would be just adding to it because of your fireplace smoking every night, all night long. It was probably a smoky smell in a house when you're cooking in there all the time. But holly and ivy and mistletoe, they were so important during Christmas and the winter that they could protect your house from witches, that they would ward them away, not only from their magical properties, but the prickliness of the plant itself was thought, if you put it on your door or above your barn, that would keep away evil spirits. And that the reason being is these plants, they flourish during the winter.
Sure.
If they can survive winter, if winter is not powerful enough, which it kills everything, if it can't kill them, there must be some significance to it. And they would put this, much like mistletoe, you could burn holly and ivy, and that if it burned clear and it had a crackling noise to it, again, it meant you were going to be very prosperous with your love life. And if not, if it smoldered and just kind of burned and wasn't crackling, well, that meant you might end up being on your own. And that holly, you could take 9 leaves of holly and tie them into 9 knots and put them under your pillow, and you'll dream about your future husband or wife. That could bring about a premonition of your future spouse.
That's interesting. And it overlays for me even just the practice of reading tea leaves. It's got sort of this idea of plants holding this magic and this divination and that somehow, I don't know, that it's creating this sort of precognition experience. I find it really interesting. Like, and it seems to overlap so many cultures. Like, I think of even the First Nations cultures here, and like burning sage and sweetgrass if you're going to, cleanse a house. And here we've got lore saying if you smoke out the house. Like, it's interesting to me how all of these different cultures and whatnot seem to overlap, and the plants themselves might be different, but the ideas are the same. And like, what do you make of that? Because it seems to me like, I don't know, that just doesn't seem like an accident to me.
I agree completely. And we have to remember this was at a time when if you fell ill, if you were hurt in an accident, it was up to you to mend yourself. You weren't going down to CVS or Walgreens to grab a prescription. So you had to use what was around you. So people were more familiar with natural remedies, or if they weren't, they knew somebody in town they could go to and provide that for them. That, again, you weren't relying on modern medicine because that wasn't available. So these stories spread from generation to generation, but also from traveler to traveler, as they talked about the idea that whenever you were done decorating for the season with these plants, the mistletoe, the holly, the ivy, that it wasn't enough for you to throw them away or even toss them into your compost pile. You had to burn them. Otherwise, it was thought it would bring you bad luck and that it would bring you mishap and misfortune, that if you did not follow these guidelines. And there were hundreds of these guidelines. I can't imagine how our ancestors got anything done, because if they were adhering to all these different things, it would just be a massive time suck on you.
I totally. Like, and in between doing so much extra in the winter just in general. Like, I know even for myself, even just to get out the door on a day like today, I mean, here it is, like it's -30, it's the middle of the afternoon. To get out the door, you're looking at 15 minutes of hats and mitts and coats and sweaters and whatever else you're packing on, and your boots and your extra socks and whatever. And then, like, I can't even imagine having farming duties on top of that, and with no modern conveniences, like zero modern conveniences. You're not going to pop back inside the house and really warm up, because at this temperature, that's just not going to happen. And then you're coupled with the weather on top of it. So if you end up with a snowstorm or anything like that, I can't imagine the level of burden, and then having to adhere to all of these things, and it's like playing whack-a-mole. So predicting winter weather is something that people must have been concerned with. What did they have in store for them or in their back pocket to determine whether or not the weather was going to be even half decent?
And that was very important in the old days when most non-Indigenous people were farmers.
Yeah.
That's how they'd survival. And there was no guarantee that your crops would come back the following season, or that your animals would reproduce, or they wouldn't go lame. It was all contingent on the weather. So predicting the weather became a very good skill to have, looking for signs that you were going to have a terrible winter season. And some of these, by today's standards, are really hard to determine. But it was said, for instance, that if you saw a caterpillar and it was extra woolly, that meant that winter was going to be harsh. And most often, these are always bad things. That nobody cares predicting a good winter. It's always the harsh winter. And
of course,
that was true with, like, if you could see the stalk of corn, if the husk of the corn was extra thick, it meant a bad winter was on the way. Same as the squirrels, if their tails were extra bushy. And, for a lot of us, we're looking out at the squirrel in our backyard thinking, how the heck do we know if it has an extra bushy tail or not? But sometimes it was easier. Like if two woodpeckers were in the same tree, it meant you were in for a terrible weather phenomena. And I think all this weather folklore and all these weather forecasts were why the Farmer's Almanac and the Old Farmer's Almanac were so popular every year.
Yeah.
And they're still, while the Farmer's Almanac is going out of print after this year, it came out in 1818 and now apparently it's just done. But the Old Farmer's Almanac will still be in existence, and they're chock full of weather folklore.
Oh, absolutely.
Things you can do that if you want to bring, and I wish I would have known this when I was a kid in school, that you can cause storms or terrible school days. Bring it to your community, like putting a spoon under your pillow at night, or putting that spoon on a windowsill, or you could put crayons in the freezer as long as they were yellow and blue, or white and blue for snow and ice, of course, or put those on the windowsill, or wear your pajamas inside out and backwards. And I'm assuming that works on the same science as like a baseball rally cap of some sort. But
probably
you could do these things.
Well, and you know what? What's really interesting is that Believe in Dean Radin's, it's not his current book, but it was the last book that he had out, Real Magic. He actually had a section in the book talking about sports rituals and sports lore. And what was so interesting to me, and I wonder if this applies to this as well, was that he found that statistically it works. That there is an actual difference between the players doing these rituals and a successful win, and the amount of wins that they got. And I found that really, really interesting. And, it's like, it makes me wonder with what we know about consciousness and stuff like that. It's like, is it as much folklore as what we think, or is there really something to that?
I definitely think that's fascinating, because it's the same when people analyze and research religious prayer.
Right.
That prayer seems to work when you get a lot of people praying for something. And again, is it religious in nature, or is it just the thought being out there? Is that projecting some sort? And I'm fascinated by that. And there's really no downside for it. For a sports team, for all these baseball players to put on rally caps or flip up the top of their hat, whatever they do, there's no downside. It doesn't cause them bad luck. So when it doesn't work, nobody said, oh, we shouldn't have done that. So there's that opportunity that it could work. So I think a lot of people engage in it with no harm.
100%. And it's funny because my all-time favorite hockey player, Corey Perry, he's known for this because right from the get-go, he has had, and it's sort of gone around the league and all the players knows that he does this, but he has got like a manifestation ritual for everything. And first year, right out of the gate after he was drafted, he won the Stanley Cup. Boom. And ever since then, he has taken nearly every single team he's been on to the Stanley Cup final, Game 7. And what's been so interesting to watch, and he played here in Edmonton for 2 years, and they talked about one of the rituals that he had that reminds me so much of what we're talking about. And he called it getting a garbage goal. And what he would do is, if the team was kind of losing and they weren't doing very well, he would go back into the dressing room and he would get a garbage can and he would find, if he could, a broken hockey stick. And he would put the broken hockey stick in the garbage can and he would tell the team, every single one of you needs to go and put something of yours in the can with the stick. And it could be a gum wrapper, it could be an old water bottle, it didn't matter what it was, but everybody had to add something to the can. And then he would leave it in the middle of the room and say, okay, nobody touches this. And within the next period, odds were he would end up getting what they call a garbage goal, which means it would be some sneaky goal beside the net, and they would be up a goal. And all the players knew he did this. And at first everyone was going, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And then they realized it was working. And so he had all of these little things that he would do. And he plays hockey this way. He's now with the LA Kings. But it just fascinated me because I thought, here it is in practice. Everything that we talk about in practice at the highest level of achievement in athletics. And you've still got people of, very high IQ that are making millions and millions of dollars. They're using this stuff. So it's like, here we're talking about people out in the boonies, hoping for a good crop. But, these types of things, it's absolutely still used.
That's absolutely correct. When you look at some of the most prominent sports psychologists in the world running their athletes through visualization, which is basically the same thing, visualizing what you want to come to fruition. And the same was with the winter stuff, that a lot of people would take the burnt ashes of their Yule log and spread it over the fields during the winter because that was thought to produce a better crop. And it wasn't so much that it was giving nutrients to the crop or fertilization. It was more that it was blessing. It was something supernatural. And that was the belief. And perhaps that made you work harder as a farmer. But whatever the reason, it seemed to work for a lot of these people.
100%. And it's interesting to look at some of these characters, whether they're in our lives now or the folklore that's kind of been left behind, and just you wonder what the impact is or was back then of families that did these things versus the families that didn't. And of course, back then, nobody's studying this like they are today, but it really makes me wonder if there had been a study back then, like how much this would have affected things like crops, health, all of that stuff. I mean, we know that the mind and consciousness and all of that has everything to do with our health and our healing and whatnot. And it just, I would assume it would be the same back then. But you came across another interesting character that is relatively new to me, Frau Perchta.
Yeah, new to a lot of people. And
yeah.
Krampus kind of soaks up all the publicity for the winter creatures. And for good reason, he's terrifying. But in the same countries, Austria, Germany, the Alpine countries, and in a lot of places in Europe, they celebrate the Epiphany on January 6th. And this is very important for a lot of those cultures. And the night before Epiphany, on Epiphany Eve, is when a lot of winter creatures will be on the prowl. And perhaps the most infamous is La Befana, who we spoke with spoke about our last interview.
Yes.
But on 12th night, Befana, in Italy, she'll deliver presents to kids, but also if you're naughty, she'll give you coal or put garbage in your stocking, and she might even throw ash at you if you wait up to see her from the fire. And people are thinking she's a wicked witch of sorts, but she's nothing compared to Frau Perchta, who also is on the prowl on Epiphany Eve. And she is this hideous looking witch-like figure. And she also always has her horde of the spirits of unbaptized children that accompany her as she prowls around the countryside on Epiphany Eve. And if you're good, she'll spare you or maybe even give you gifts or presents or food. But she's also known as the belly slitter. And for good reason, because, if you're naughty, she's not giving you coal in your stocking. She's slicing out your stomach and your innards all fall out. And then don't worry, she won't let you die. For some reason, she'll stuff you with garbage or trash and then sew you up with her makeshift rusty needle. And then you go about your day.
What's wrong with these people?
And again, the symbolism of death and darkness. And that was so important for the early peoples, which on the flip side was the fire. It was the evergreens, the Christmas trees that you would bring in with candles. Not only as a remembrance that evergreens couldn't be defeated by winter, so you might be able to survive it as well, but that reminder that light will overcome darkness, that the sun will come back, that life will continue in the spring. So your candles, your Yule log fire, your solstice fire, the candles on your Christmas tree, those were all meant to provide light in the time of dark. And it was more of keeping your sanity than anything else, which is why today when I tell people that, it was custom to keep a fire going all the 12 days of Christmas, and that people will now use candles if they don't have a fireplace, or electric candles if they don't want to burn down their house, or even many streaming services have a Yule log fire that you can just project. And the symbolism remains the same, that light overcoming darkness, whether you're doing it with the old-fashioned Yule log or modern day Netflix.
Or you're just running from Frau Percha. Really?
Yeah, the idea, the belief of it. And not surprising, food also plays into a lot of these legends as well. That during those times, it was thought that food could prevent a lot of these things from happening, especially with the little people, the Nissa, the Tomten. Those were the protectors of your farm. They would communicate with your animals and cure their minor ailments. They would help out on the farm. They lived in the stable or up in the barn, and they could be invisible when they wanted. But during the winter, especially during the Christmas season, they often would like to come into the house and get some offerings, whether it was some baked goods, some treats, some spirits, alcohol, but they loved rice porridge. And so much so that it came down to even specific ingredients. Like you had to put the little slab of butter on top of the porridge, because if you hid it and tried to trick them by putting it underneath, there's a famous story of them stealing someone's best cow, the bull, out on the property because they thought they'd be funny and hide the butter underneath the porridge.
Oh, geez.
When I speak about this at a lot of just regular everyday crowds, the general public, some people think, when I jokingly say that I leave out offerings for the little people all winter long, and maybe they like to live more dangerously than I do and they don't want to leave those out. And some people even say, it seems too much like a pagan ritual to leave out offerings for supernatural creatures, until they realize they do the same thing for Santa,
right,
leaving out cookies and milk as an offering. But I guess, and I'll see what you think of this, I guess nowadays that milk and cookies is more of like for Santa's energy, and maybe the reindeers, the carrots for the reindeers, more so than an offering. It's more like, we're going to provide you sustenance.
Yeah, I think people have, twisted it into something new. But I mean, that is what it is, though. I mean, this, at the end of the day, it's a ritual and it's an offering, in my opinion. And I think I'll add to your little people theory. I've got a very dear friend here in Edmonton, and she swears by the fact that there are little people living in and around her house, for real. And it's really interesting to listen to her stories because her place backs onto a field. She's in a little community just west of Edmonton called Stony Plain. And what's been interesting is she's kind of seen these throughout her life. Like, there's been a number of instances that she's had where she's seen things that she can't explain. But what she's noticed is that, I mean, as I say, there's nobody really around her house out at the back or anything like that because she does back onto this field. And especially in the summertime, she notices stuff on her deck that's been moved, little stacks of rocks. Like, she'll come out to her patio furniture to sit down in the evening, and there'll be little stacks of rocks on the table or on the chair. She's had a lot of things disappear and go missing, and then when she's demanded to have them back, they come back and are in a place that she would never leave it. So she's had a number of reports, and she is absolutely dead set on the fact that it's little people. And I'm like, you know what? Probably is. It's really interesting. So I mean, keep leaving the stuff out, okay?
Yes, definitely, especially during this time of the year. And many believe on Christmas Eve is when you need to put that rice porridge out for them. But you can leave out treats and other offerings whenever you want, all winter long. And the idea is that winter, they're cold, they'll come in by the hearth and they'll try to warm up. And that's when they want to be appeased. And that's kind of their payment for the entire year, more respect than any financial payment. And if not, they might go somewhere else. They might make sure that someone else's farm or household runs smooth, that there's no accidents, that things run properly. And this was a big belief around the world when most people were farmers. And I always ask the question of, what happens as more and more of us have left the countryside and moved to cities and towns? Do the little people still follow us here, or do they stay on the ancient lands? And again, that just falls back to the idea that I'm not taking any chances. I'm leaving out offerings all winter. And there's a really good show on Netflix. I think it's still there, but it's called There's Something in the Barn. And it is a horror comedy movie that shows the Nissa and the Tomten, the little people, that this American family moves to Norway. And there are Tomten there. There are the Nissa and the little people in the barn. And they're told by the locals that, they don't like things to change, that they like it to be the way it was traditionally. And this loud American family comes in and says, we're going to put up all these decorations and have huge boombox Christmas going. And well, then you can imagine what takes place. But it really is focusing on that folklore of the early days of what you need to do not to anger these little people or these spirits or these creatures like Iceland's Grilla, the ogress. She's the mother of the Yule lads. She's really not one that can be persuaded. She'll eat kids whether they're good or bad.
At least somebody's getting a Christmas dinner
too, but yeah, she'll eat her husbands, and she'll eat anything. But others like Frau Perchta, if you're good, you can escape it. Bafana, the same. Krampus, Belsnickel will let you plead your case if you can recite a verse from the Bible or a play from school, or if you can do a little play or dance for him. Those things can be bribed, if you will.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the Belsnickel actually as you were talking about her, because he's another one that kind of just goes under the radar that people aren't familiar with. And he sort of runs along that same line as Krampus. Like, there's so many of these spirits, these entities that at the time I think people were so fearful of. But it really does make you wonder, as we've talked about so many times about the idea of different different cultures or different eras looking at certain types of phenomenon that they're experiencing and coming up with a story to encircle the phenomenon so that they can understand it. I don't know. I'll ask you this question. Do you think that maybe that's what was happening with some of these stories, just in the same way that people still report the Jersey Devil, is that maybe people were experiencing something and then creating a story around the something to try to make sense of it?
I think so, because again, when things are happening, it's dark, it's cold, the wind's whipping, you might come up with things to explain away these stories. And in the old days, these were truly terrifying things that I have so many newspaper accounts from the early 1900s out on the east coast of the United States where Belsnickel was prevalent, that adults would have trauma as adults because they remembered Belsnickel coming to their house as a kid and their parents allowing Belsnickel inside, and that they would be whipped with this birch switch. And punishment was a big thing for all these supernatural creatures, that at the very least you were going to get struck with their birch switch and hit and whipped with it. And at the other end of the spectrum, you might get taken from your family and brought to hell, or Belsnickel would feed you to his pet bears and that kind of thing, where it truly was where adults were saying, we're too traumatized. Belsnickel is too scary. Let's soften him up. Yeah. And they did for a while, but then eventually they said, well, his origin needs to go back to the way it was. I think the same reason a lot of people love reading the original fairy tales and the Grimm brothers, their versions before Disney got a hold of them, because they truly are terrifying. There's not a lot of happy endings.
No, there totally wasn't. Like, I think even people, when they're thinking about these characters, that we do get a sort of this dumbed down version of what we had, even down to Santa Claus. I mean, Santa Claus's history is not what we think it is today. And that was something that really surprised me. Like when we were working on Winter Legends and Lore, and for me, it was really interesting because I've got a Norse background, but his connections to Odin and that he didn't have 8 tiny reindeer. He had 2, stuff like that. Like there was stuff even about Santa Claus that I had no idea about. Do you want to talk a little bit about Santa?
I think you're right that Santa and all the gift bringers from around the world, whether it's Father Christmas or Sinterklaas and Saint Nicholas himself, that these all, I think, came from Odin, or at least were heavily influenced by the Norse gods, that the wild hunt and all the mythology surrounding the Norse gods really played into all of the gift bringers. But they originally were more looking like, Belsnickel. They were disheveled. They looked like they lived in the woods. They were covered in fur or brown clothing. Sometimes they were adorned in green or blue. And then, of course, Santa took on St. Nicholas's red and white. And St. Nicholas obviously is different than Santa. He comes around the world on December 6th, the night before December 5th, going into the 6th with this Krampus night, of course. And he'll leave out, mostly for kids that put their shoes out, he'll leave you chocolates or candies or fruit. And today, if you leave a kid an orange for Christmas or St. Nicholas Day, they kind of chuck it out. And what's this nonsense? But imagine 100 years ago, 150 years ago, how delicious that orange would have tasted in the dead of winter when you couldn't find fruit that was fresh. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And Santa was heavily influenced here in America by a lot of the artists that would depict him. And in the early days, when Santa was here in America, he had his pipe with him wherever he went. If he was depicted, even with children around him, he'd be smoking the entire time. And I always joke that today, like most of us, Santa has made better health decisions and, he doesn't smoke anymore. You'll never find him with his pipe anymore, but that's just one of the biggest changes. But I think in general, the biggest change between Christmas today than it was 100 and 150 years ago is when we celebrate it. Where today, you can't make it through Halloween without Christmas decorations being in stores.
100%.
That scholars are now looking at it as Christmas creep, that Christmas is creeping its way ever closer to Thanksgiving and Halloween, and that by the time Christmas ends today, that people are sick of it. They're done. I've been celebrating it for 3 months, but in the old days, they celebrated it too, just in the other direction. They started with Christmas Eve and then did the 12 days of Christmas, going to January 6th, which is the Epiphany, the Feast of the Three Kings. So they wouldn't celebrate beforehand. That was Advent. That was a month of weekends where you were to spend it contemplating, meditating, trying to figure out the meaning of the season and what it all meant. And you were in a calm state getting ready for the 12 days. And that's where the Advent calendar obviously comes from.
Sure.
But today we celebrate it so much on the other side. And Halloween's doing the same thing, pushing its way deeper and deeper into summer. And I think that really shows the importance of these holidays and traditions, that we yearn for them. We need them so much that a month of Christmas isn't enough. We want to make it 6 weeks and then 8 weeks and 12 weeks. And people saying, why can't we have Halloween all year round?
Well, I have to say about Christmas, I'm one of those people. I mean, it's funny because I've noticed, it's funny you bring that up, because I've noticed over the last, I would say 2 or 3 years, at least here in Alberta, the lights are getting left on a lot longer. We in my house, we put the Christmas tree up in November, and I mean, we just want to get as much out of it as we possibly can. And we always thought that us taking the tree down sometime in January was kind of long, but we just love it because it's so dark here in Edmonton for so long. But I've noticed over the last number of months or last number of years that more and more people are doing that. Like, people still have their trees and their lights up and on in February. And I think, and this is just my opinion, I think people are really looking for joy. And it's like, I mean, it is super dark here. I mean, once you hit February here, you're hitting frigid temperatures all the time. But I feel like people are genuinely trying to seek out joy, and they're leaving their lights on longer.
That's a great observation, and I agree completely. And I think you hit it right on the head of why. They're looking for that joy. And I think partially it's the time we live in, but also the fact that in the old days, you would have so many different ceremonies and traditions that you'd be celebrating New Year's Eve as a community with giant bonfires where you were trying to burn away the previous year. So you'd have Saturnalia, you'd be celebrating the solstice. So you had 24 holidays and traditions during that time. And a lot of those have gone by the wayside. People have forgotten about them a lot. So now we just take the big ones and we expand them. But I noticed the same thing here in America, that yes, you'll have Christmas lights, and this is different than people putting out camping lights, the white lights or the yellow lights on. No, this is meant to be joyful Christmas stuff that is expanding from. It used to be here in America, Christmas would not start until after Thanksgiving.
Right.
That was blasphemy if you were setting up stuff. But now, Thanksgiving, you can't even find Christmas stuff at Thanksgiving because most of it's been sold already.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Like, yeah, I've definitely seen the shift, and I'm happy about it in the sense that I feel like maybe people are even pulling back into those old traditions a little bit, and seeking out that light, seeking out that joy. Like, this seems to me to be a very almost primitive calling within people. Like we talk about the idea of, everybody gathering around the fireplace and everything we've just talked about today. And it feels to me like maybe we're starting to get back to that a little bit, as everything's becoming way more expensive. And I swear to God, more than half of Canada's on the food bank right now. And like we're just sort of pulling back maybe to the basics. And I find it just interesting, like how people are keeping their lights up longer. And I welcome it. I think it's a good thing. And I think it's a healthy thing,
I think even for a lot of people, pulling back is just a necessity, but others want to get back to that origin and roots. Yeah.
I'm in the necessity category.
And others are doing it, one, because it helps them, but also it's the origin of giving gifts was meant to be something that you'd give a small gift. Like St. Nicholas would bring you an orange or a piece of chocolate or something. And it wasn't meant to be 500 gifts spending $5,000 on each person. And I think for a lot of people, that's really put a damper on their holiday season, that it feels like it's been taken over by greed and corporations, where if they can make a heartfelt gift, or even better, give a gift of their time to somebody, that I think so many psychologists now are studying the benefits of giving rather than receiving, that it makes you feel 100 times better than it does the person you're giving it to. That people are getting creative where they'll say, I'm giving my sister a babysitting coupon where I'll babysit for her, or I'll cook a meal for somebody, or I'll clean their house. Those type
Great
of
idea.
things. Those were the early origins of it as well, because people weren't running out to Best Buy in the 1700s and buying a big screen for their neighbors and friends, So
Sure.
They were doing those gifts of service, gifts of gratitude.
Well, and I think that can't be understated, is the fact of when we do give, it fills us up. And I always remember there was a number of years ago, there was a Dr. Phil episode where the one guest that he had on was this girl, and she was just the most entitled girl. And the one thing that he had her do was go and serve at a soup kitchen. And it was probably the best thing that could have happened to her. And, somebody that was going from just looking at consuming everything to realizing how much better it was to be able to actually have that relationship with somebody who didn't have what you have and are able to give something. It's really amazing. And it's amazing to me how little encouragement people are actually looking for. We think that they want all these really big things, but in the reality of life, really people aren't looking for that much. And when it comes down to the basics of it, at least in my experience, they're looking for that little bit of encouragement, or that extra phone call or whatever it is. And I think, I think all of this is maybe coming to a head, and maybe people are starting to realize that. But talk about winter legends and lore and where people can get it, because I want everybody to have a copy of it for this holiday so they know what the hell to avoid and how to avoid this Frau Percha thing. What do they do? Where do they get this?
If you're looking to stay safe this winter, I did a shorter book called Winter Legends and Lore, and Morgan did all the artwork for it. So that's the favorite part for a lot of people. And I love it because it's just a jumping off point, that it's not 400 pages of the history of Santa, but it gives you enough to get you started, or why we celebrate New Year's Eve, and, the history of Santa, all these things, where it's meant in today's world where people might not have 4 hours a night to read. I wish we all did, but so yeah, my website is probably the best place to get a signed copy, but you can find it at any bookseller. And Morgan, I don't know, you might know this, but it's one of the Norse countries, one of the Scandinavian countries, where Christmas, everyone gets somebody a book that they think they'll love, and then the family spends the night reading the books together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish that would come to America.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And Yeah, and I always loved that, and it's something special too for me because Galen is really into books. Like, you want to make Galen super happy for Christmas, you get him a book because he loves sitting with me and I read to him, and it's such a special connection. And we've done it now. He's 21 now. We've done it for about 11 years, and every evening he and I sit and I read to him, and we've been through I don't know how many books over the years. And he's definitely got his favorites, but it's such a poignant thing to not only sort of recollect yourself, but just to bond with everybody. Like I've met so many families over the years that don't even read to their kids, and it's like, what happened? So I'm completely for this tradition. We need to make this a resurgence.
And it was on Christmas Eve that the family would read one ghost story together. And there are many books now you can get from your local library that are a Victorian ghost story. One of them, just a small little book meant to be read in about 30 minutes on Christmas Eve with your family. And I love that tradition of just reading scary stuff around the fire on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I bought Galen this, and it's not scary, but it's become a great little tradition for us. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote there was a book called Letters from Father Christmas. And so for any Lord of the Rings fans out there, you need this book. But it's so cool because what he did for years with his grandkids was to write them a letter as Santa. And every single year he would write them this little letter, and the letter always had some sort of an adventure in it where he and this polar bear that Santa apparently lives with would get into a complete mess, and they'd be like dealing with goblins and creatures, and they'd have to be defending the North Pole. And some of the letters were really sweet. Some of them were like adventures, some of them. But anyway, so Letters from Father Christmas is just this little bit of, I think, what's going to turn into more folklore of Tolkien writing these letters to his kids. And now they're all compiled into this book of Santa's stories and what he was doing at the North Pole. And it's so cool. So every day in December, Galen and I, we don't read it in order. We just sort of like pick a year and we'll read the letter, but it's become sort of a little thing. It's great. It's just great. So thank you so much for sharing all of this incredible knowledge with everybody, because we had to do it. People need a solid Christmas episode, and maybe this will become their tradition now.
Thanks again for having me, and I'm at least 80% sure Frau Perchta will not be coming for you this year. So
there's no guarantees. Let's be real.
Yes.
We've already had the Wendigo. It's all bets are off at this point.
Yeah.
In Walmart's Nouvelle, time was ticking away. Only a few nights left till the big holiday. But last-minute gifters had no need to worry. Walmart Express Delivery got their gifts in a hurry. From Nintendo to Nespresso and Lego flowers, they could check off their lists in as fast as an hour. All of Nouvelle, East, West, South, and North, could order gifts up until 5 p.m. on December 24th. So this holiday, just do as the Who's do. With gift delivery this fast, they all gasped. From Walmart? Who knew? Subject to availability, terms and fees apply.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
The McDonald's Snack Wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch Snack Wrap. Spicy Snack Wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack Wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Kraft mac and cheese is the best thing ever. It's even better than pop music. You look just as natural enjoying us at age 13 as you do 55. Kraft mac and cheese. Best thing ever.
Well, what an incredible conversation with Chad, and what a great way to start off Christmas week. Merry Christmas, everybody. This is been quite an interesting year for everybody. And first of all, I just wanted to tell you that if you have a chance to go and order Chad's book, Winter Legends and Lore, please do it. It's a fantastic adventure into some of the craziest stories, some of the ones that we touched on here today, but also some others that, it's full of incredible stories. And when I had the opportunity to illustrate this, I'm telling you, I learned so much, including stuff about Santa Claus, like Santa Claus, who we see every single year, that I still had no clue about. So it was just really cool, but it's packed full of some of the spookiest Christmas lore you ever want. So I highly recommend, go to chadlewisresearch.com. I'm going to have the link in the show notes so you guys can go and order a copy of this. It's so enjoyable. And I'm not just saying that because I did the drawings, but it's just such an enjoyable read, and it's an easy read. It's really cool. So I just wanted to also touch on something that I think is really important this year, which is reminding ourselves about gratitude and appreciation. You know, it hasn't been an easy year for most people, especially in Canada this year. You know, for the American listeners, things in Canada have gotten pretty rough, and there's a lot of people that are dead broke, that are really struggling. I mean, myself and my family included. I mean, it's not been fun. And I just wanted to remind everybody that one of the reasons why this show exists is to remind us that, as we say at the end of every episode, everything is consciousness. And we can always come back to that, and we can always come back to gratitude. We can always come back to appreciation, even if it's just for the little things. And the one thing I know about the universe is that when you start appreciating the small things that are in front of you and having that gratitude, the universe tends to bring you more of that feeling. So it brings more encounters with things to be appreciative of. And I know this to be true with 100% of my being. I've experienced it. I've gone from, homelessness to television over the years, so I've walked the walk, and it's not always easy, and it can be hell. But I think we can always, no matter what stage you're at, we can always come back to that consciousness. Anything through meditation, through, as I say, appreciation, all of those things. Pick up, there's an amazing book called Ask and It Is Given by Esther Hicks. And it's a phenomenal book. It was actually a book that was channeled. And it's got processes in the back that half the book is about exactly what we're talking about. The other half is processes that you guys can do on a daily basis to keep yourselves in that emotional center. And it's just an incredible book. And I highly recommend everybody going out and grabbing a copy of that. Ask and It Is Given by Esther Hicks. If you're having trouble or just want to enhance the good feeling of the holidays, right? So that being said, we've got some incredible stuff coming up in the new year, and I'm so excited to just launch into the new year with some brand new guests, brand new information for you guys. 2026 is going to be a really interesting year. Of course, everybody's talking about it being potentially the year of disclosure. We've got a lot to look forward to here, so let's do it. This is the last episode, guys, of 2025. This is it. So, that being said, thank you for joining me today and every day, my dear listeners, on this incredible and eerie expedition. And remember, there is no line between the natural and the supernatural. All is consciousness. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Supernatural Circumstances is a co-production of Entity Seeker, Paranormal Research and Teachings, and The 20th Plane. This podcast is a part of the Curious Cast podcast network. You can find out more about me, Morgan Knudsen, and book me for live appearances at entityseeker.ca. You can also email the show at supernaturalcircumstances.com.
There are streaming services, and then there's Stack TV. What you want, when you want it. Action, comedy, drama, reality, all when you want it. Dive into Rick and Morty's latest season. Cast off with new seasons of Survivor and The Curse of Oak Island. Or stream binge-worthy gems like The Paper and All Her Fault. All when you want it. This fall, Stack TV has what you want when you want it. Visit stacktv.ca for more information and start your free trial.